Good evening, America. I have a question, America. When will the welfare, the well being, the safety of our youth in America will become first? When will we find some people that have the guts, brave enough to stand up against the NRA and the people that the NRA are lining their pockets with money to to keep the laws lenient so individuals, just any old Joe, can purchase assault weapons. We need to come together as Americans and as God fearing people. You see, in America, we have this very, very easy to escape responsibility by saying things like, well, if God didn't want it to be, it wouldn't be. Okay? If God didn't want it to be, it wouldn't be. God didn't want Adam and Eve to eat from the forbidden tree of the forbidden fruit. God did not want Jonah, who had supposed to went and delivered a message to a people that was out of line, and God wanted Jonah to go to them and let them know that they would, in fact, receive the wrath of God if they didn't straighten up. But Jonah decided to go in another direction. Now, there are so many other situations that have occurred in the Bible that gives us, without a doubt, an understanding that regardless of how we want to justify some of the things that take place in this world, that it wasn't anything that God had anything to do with. God gave us, and I don't know why there are so many people that are blind to the fact God gave us freedom of choice. We can go with God, or we can go with God's adversary. So, These two forces have been at a tug of war since the beginning of time. God gave us the freedom of choice to show us his love, that he was not going to have children that could say that we were our maker's slaves. That is the way I see it. And that is the only way I can see it as making any sense. Why God gave us freedom of choice. If we are going to continue to be on this roller coaster ride with this very unstable, systematic structure that is in the infrastructure of our country, that is in the system in which that we are ruled by. If we are going to blindly allow lawlessness to continue for some, there will be excuses. Others will be prosecuted. It is something that is in place to use discretion on who pays and who don't. We should have a system where anyone and everyone that commits these various violent acts of lawlessness and very biased system that allow some people with rights and others without. People of America, we are all on the same boat. And if we continue to rock the boat, we are all going to drown in our own selfish, mindless, and inconsiderate lifestyles. What we need to do is we need to own up to the individuals that are our officials that are working for us, the taxpayers, and get them in line. Because if we continue to just sit back and twiddle our thumbs and pray and hope that something happens instead of doing something about it, we need to understand that that is our mission. while we are here in this existence. We all have a mission and with the masses and with individual efforts. In the masses, our responsibility is to select the right officials who we want to run the country. And it's not because they sound tough. And it's not because they will save us money, especially when you got a whole lot of it. There are these individuals got money just pouring out of their ears. Don't have a worry in the world. But they still do not want to pay their fair share. So they have loopholes of hiding their money. They have ways of concealing, covering up their conspiracies. And we just continue to allow it to happen. God wants us to love one another as sister and brother, to love one another as we would love ourselves. And I know that's not always so easy. But we need to be more mindful of others, is what the problem is. We're not being mindful of others. We are not caring about how some of these laws in which that we choose not to clean up, how it affects so many others. How politicians are getting richer and richer and richer, while just regular civilians, everyday citizens, are catching pure hell. And it might be not even on the surface. Like the individuals that have disabilities, and they're rolling back funding for people that have disabilities. So where it is even harder for them to live a fairly decent existence in this world, to where they can be living without having to struggle so hard. And our children, we need to protect them against all harm that we have experienced that has fallen on top of them. Then we also need to understand that we should also make sure that our senior citizens are looked after also in their last days. Now, why is medical assistance necessary? Because it is something that in which that we need to have a healthy America. I would think that that would be something that all Americans would want. Because see, if we're not taking care of ourselves, then who will? And the government cannot continue to just ignore the wounds in which that have fallen upon us and try to cover it up with a band-aid. A very serious wound that has been open for so long that it's began to be infected with all types of ailments in which that has causing our system to collapse. But instead of doing something about it to make it more stable, we cover it up with a band-aid. Something that is not enough to heal the problem. And if we continue to place these labels on each other, Republican, Democrat, Independent, all this other garbage, haven't we had it enough problems with racial discrimination? And then we put more bias types of stipulations on one another with actually we're no better than the street gangs. Only we look at the situation in which that the people that are not labeled as individuals that are in street gangs or mafias or syndicates and things like that, they're Democrats, they're Republicans, they're black, they're white, they're Spanish, they're Asian, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Are we going to sink the boat that we're on? Will it be us that put holes in the bottom of the boat? Will it be us that steer our boat into a glacier? Will it be us that take a nosedive from out of the air into a crowd of unexpected individuals that glacier could be gun laws, which may sink our boat. That nosedive airplane into the crowd could be gun laws. That those holes in the boat could be Social Security and Medicaid that sinks the boat. All these catastrophes could be how we run our country and how we deal with human rights. When we have people in position that do not want to acknowledge that there are people in this world that needs a system that will help these individuals to be able to live a tolerable life. When they know that when we hear people say, why can't they pay for their own insurance? And they know why. That question is not a question in which that it will take a genius or even a rocket scientist to figure it out, because they're poor, because they don't have the money, because they are a part of this country. Having the kingdoms of every civilization in which that has come about used the taxes to take care of the people, isn't that the reason behind tax laws? To provide for the people of the land. Otherwise, there should not be any taxes. We've already had somebody come in and change a law that has been in existence since the beginning of civilization. And it had worked for years and years and years, decades on over top of decades, generations on top of generations, had worked. And then we had some little peon come along and change the law of bankruptcy, where an individual can be forgiven their debts. And then change it so where bankruptcy is not really bankruptcy anymore. Not how it used to be. You still, under certain, well, every law, it depends on what law it is, on how much you pay back. But you still have to pay it back. There is no relief. This this tax reform thing, these gun laws, these destroying health care and retirement for Social Security, that's hell. That is denying an individual the rights to be human and placing them in a hellified situation. Everybody knows it. Everybody can see it. That we are allowing these officials in our country today to just take advantage of us. No matter what we do to try to speak out, they still deafen their ears not to listen to us. But if the people of this country sincerely and wholeheartedly wanted to do something, because see, by us being the taxpayers, we are the ones that are paying their paycheck. We are the ones that are providing them a livelihood. We are the people, and the power is to the people. But it appears to me as if the people don't have backbone like they did back in the 60s, where we let it be known that the power is to the people and the government is working for us. But regardless of how we may want to deny that in this secular world, that in this physical, in this material world, that there is sovereignty that takes place in this world, that there are a spiritual power in which that exists in this world, that we do indeed have divine beings that also are in this world, that the devil and God both do coexist. Rather, if we want to look at it as being demonically orchestrated, manipulated, well, it is. Rather, if we want to admit that we are in the middle and witnessing the end of days, in which what we call the apocalypse. These are the days of the apocalypse. These are the days of the Armageddon. These are the days in which that we would know if Jesus had already arrived or not. Why? Because would we accept him would we say that in fact is Jesus? No, we wouldn't. We would question the Son of God. Yes, we would. And we would ask him, we would put him to the test. We would be as Satan did when Jesus was in the desert, and Satan challenged Jesus and told him to turn the stones into bread. And if he kneeled down and worshiped him, all this would belong to him, as if he was the ruler of this world. See, even Satan will try to convince the Son of God that he is the power, that he is the ultimate. But see, we are so blind and so reluctant to accept the existence of God and Satan, to where if we look to God, we don't have faith that he will indeed deliver us, because before anything was to manifest, we would take our will back and fall right back in line with Satan. So, on who rules our world today in this life and time is up to us. If you are catering to the devil and following his ways, well, that's your ruler. See, because it's up to us as individuals. God gave us the freedom of choice to do or not to do, to be or not to be. The Pharaoh, when Moses told Pharaoh that if he did not mend his ways and listen to the message in which that God has brought to him through Moses, that God would cast these plagues upon his kingdom. But like man always do, choose not to listen, choose not to believe, choose not to yield to our Father God's commandments. And we're still doing it today. Because we're rather afraid to emerge from out of our own comfort zones. Our comfort zones. But then we want to scream Holy Jesus when things start getting dark, start getting tight. But while at the same time, while we calling on God, before God can even begin to see if we're going to be strong enough to yield to what he has in store for us, we can be so easily knocked off course by the adversary and fall right back in line with Satan and his followers. We really do. we don't want to admit it, but that's so true. Because if we're going to continue to allow these guns to kill our children, well, we could raise holy hell about it. Martin Luther King came along and did something that has never been done again since his death. A minister to take up his own sword and go into battle. But see, today, the devil has placed this inside of the minds of the people by saying politics and religion don't mix. What do you think religion is? It's another form of politics. It definitely is. You have your head of the church. You have your trustees, Congress. You have your associate ministers, governors, and mayors. You have your women's movement. You have your men's group. You have your activities in sports. Another form of politics that we call religion. Still, it's politics. So, when we allow Satan to disguise and hide in the shadows of life and then say, no, we can't have politics in our church. What do you think churches are built off from? Politics. That's right. All of it is laws. And our Father God, He is the King. But if we continue to go in the direction in which that we have been going, we will be lost in hell forever. I look to my Father. Sincerely and wholeheartedly. I don't need no one to tell me to seek my Father God's will. Because I will. In fact, if I feel that where I am at in my home of worship is not abiding by our Father God, and they are acting on their own will, I will go somewhere else and seek a much more comfortable house of God in which that I can live with. Instead of just staying, I call on my Father to lead me, to guide me, to direct me in the direction in which that He chooses for me to go. But I know that this force in which that I am up against is with the adversary. He don't even want me to be known that I exist. If he could, he would love to stop me from doing these live chats on Facebook. I've written 3 books. I mean, an extensive, long books, thick books. Whereas Satan in this existence has convinced anyone and everyone that could be instrumental in helping me to get the word in which that my Father God has given me that will help our individuals of this existence to be able to see the attributes and the conduct, how the areas of Satan work, would be published. So, David, you ain't that smart. When did you learn how to do something like that? Because you didn't. You never even cared to try to. You never asked God to give you the light to do what's right. I did. That's how I got it. I asked for it. Because I do, in fact, say, and I am, the consciousness of my Father God. I am the voice of my Father God. I am the hands and the feet of my Father God. This King David D just came on here to share with you, to let you know that I love you. Do you love me?